Thank you for staying with us. The judiciary system in Nigeria continues to plan an unquantifiable role or play an unquantifiable role in the administration of justice and also decides the outcome of any election if challenged by defeated and aggrieved candidates, plays an active role in impeachment proceedings and actively participates in corruption investigation and prosecution, amongst others. However, in the past years, these roles and functions performed by the judiciary in Nigeria have been a subject of debate and questioning due to the widespread allegation of bribery and corruption amongst the juries and other court officials. According to Transparency International 2022 Corruption Perception Index, Nigeria ranks 150 out of 180 countries. With corruption being a major challenge in the country, Nigeria barely has faith in the justice system. Well, joining us in the studio is a lawyer, Inibehe Effiong. Inibehe, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Like I and Theophilus were having a conversation earlier, I said, after the general election, all eyes went to the judiciary. People became seemingly aware that there was a judiciary system in the country. The young, the old, everyone was, looking at the activities of the judiciary, following through. And then we now saw recent times talking about the appeals court judgments with regards to the removal of the Kanu, Plateau, and Zamfara state governors. So many issues, even legal luminaries were speaking with regards to the controversies surrounding these judgments, and it began to raise eyebrows. And then recently, the matter of certified true copies now came to the fore, and it seemed to have put a nail to the coffin, so to speak, on the matters or the mindsets people have with regards to the judiciary. A lot of persons were just speaking with regards to this. Now, talk to us, the judiciary being under trial as we speak. How did we even get to this point?
Thank you. It's quite an interesting matter. The judiciary as an organ of government occupies a very special position under our constitution. The role of courts, the role of the judges and justices is very unique in the sense that of the three organs of government, the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary has a preeminent role of resolving disputes within itself and disputes between other organs of government. So you find like what is happening in Rivers State now, where the House of Assembly is factionalized. Yes. Some come supporting Fabura, other camps believed to be supporting Wike, and then you now have to submit yourself to the courts to have that resolved. We have also seen situations where even internally within the judiciary, when the judiciary is involved in crisis, it is also the judiciary that resolves that crisis. So what that does is that it places judges only next to God, because it is a judge who has the power to determine the fate of men. When people are tried for capital offenses like murder, like armed robbery, like treason and so on, if they are found guilty, a judge has the power to make a pronouncement of death legally on the person. So what that requires, or what that entails, is that when a person is appointed to the bench, it is expected that that person would live above board, that that person would be incorruptible, that that person would not be someone that can be easily influenced by external factors. Again, the judiciary is also special in the sense that it is the only organ of government that is reserved for a particular profession, the noble profession of law, even though that nobility is now being consistently questioned.
Yes.
So it is only lawyers. Every judge and justice or magistrate must have been a lawyer before you can go to the bench. So you have the bar and the bench. Now, in our country, the judiciary has, went through very trying periods. And in fact, the other point I want to emphasize to show how special the judiciary is that even under the worst military dictatorship, the worst military regimes in this country, the judiciary was always the only organ of government that was in place. When the military strike, they will resolve parliament, they will resolve the executive, they don't ever resolve the judiciary. At worst, what they will do is to promulgate auster clauses to limit the jurisdiction of courts.
Right.
But even in those circumstances, we still had judges and justices who, despite the impunity of the military, still asserted their authority, still held the military accountable. That shows I'm laying this foundation to say that more is expected under a democracy where judges do not necessarily function with guns being pointed at them directly or indirectly by military despots. So one would expect that in a constitutional, democracy, in a system of government where, the people elect their leaders, that judges will be more courageous, that judges will be more bold.
Right.
But what we have seen, quite sadly over the years, is that it does appear there's a strong school of thought within the legal profession that the judiciary seems to have even been stronger under the military. That judges seems to have been more bold under the military.
Right.
And that judgments, of course, were even more sacred under the military. That is quite an irony. That is not supposed to be the case. We have, for example, the Lucas Classicus case of military governor of Lagos State and Ojukwu, where the military governor of Lagos State tried to take Ojukwu's property, and then the matter went to court. While the matter was still in court, the military disregarded that process and still went into the property, and then the Supreme Court said you cannot do that. We had the case of, the Guardian newspaper's case, an authority of the Federation, where Guardian newspaper was read, and then they had their place seized. The court still stood up to it. We saw justices and judges under the military delivering very strong. In fact, under the military, there were instances where judges would say they are not going to rise until their orders are complied with. But guess what? Under a democracy, what we have seen over the years, you see courts make order, law enforcement agencies make a ridicule of it. You see courts, sometimes being very reluctant to hold the executive arm of government accountable.
How did we get here? That's the question. What changed?
I think we have always going to get to where we are. And I'm not saying that the entire institution is facing this problem, but the prevalence of it is one that cannot be contested. We got here because we have not invested in institutional independence as a country. Beyond even the question of lack of financial autonomy. Because when people speak about the judiciary, just like we speak about the executive, most Nigerians usually just pay attention to Abuja. But I kid you not, at the state level, the judiciary is even worse off. At the states, chief judges today basically have to prostrate before their governors to have the judiciary funded, to be able to even acquire, in fact, things like, I know a state, I'm not going to mention the name, but I know a state where the yearly almanac couldn't even be paid for. Yes, the calendar of the courts couldn't even be paid for. It is so bad that we see governors in Nigeria go on TV to say, I have bought 10 cars for my judges. I have bought SUV for judges. Governors don't make that announcement when they buy cars for commissioners. But in this country, we see the judiciary being treated as the department of the executive, as part of the Ministry of Justice. That has always been a problem. So we see the judiciary at the federal and at the national and the subnational level basically very reluctant to assert its authority, to assert itself. The other problem is also what looks like a moral crisis within the legal profession. Many lawyers, I know lawyers in Nigeria today who don't even want to be identified as lawyers anymore. I know colleagues who have thrown away their wig and gowns. They don't want to appear in court anymore because they have simply lost faith in the process. There's so much challenges that for us in litigation, there is so much that you have to deal with. There is so much problem internally that one is confronted with. That practicing law in Nigeria, we are beginning to lose the incentive for legal practice in our country. To make it more complicated, electoral cases has not helped matters. Because this is the area where judges and justices face the highest scrutiny. And that is expected because it is required in a democracy that governance should be derived from the sovereignty, from the will of the people. So when we see political cases go to court, the voters on both sides, they are usually very, very interested in the outcome of the process.
Absolutely.
They want to know whether really the person we voted for, his will is going to be, sustained by the courts. But again, it does appear that the politicians, unfortunately, have appropriated the Nigerian judiciary to an extent. And this is not my word. You heard what the learned, recently retired justice of the Supreme Court said. I mean, that speaks to everything.
Okay, so who do
that's
we,
going on in the court.
Who or what do we blame? Do we blame the politicians? Do we blame the judges? Or do we blame the lawyers? Because a particular judge at a point accused, or recently, accused some senior lawyers of trying to bribe panel members to the tune of 10 million naira. And this allegation has not just come for the first time. That's been said before. So who do we blame in all of this?
Well, a young lawyer typically would not think of bribing a judge.
Definitely.
I've never heard of that. But that is not to say that, you know, I don't want to make a generic pronouncement. What I can tell you is that, and again, I think everybody in the profession agrees with it, that we have a problem of corruption in the judiciary. Mm-hmm. But that's not to say that the entire institution, you know, we should not portray the picture that the entire institution is plagued by corruption. There are very noble judges in this country. I've had the privilege of appearing before judges in this country that you can go to sleep. You know, the greatest strategy for a litigation lawyer, a lawyer who goes to court to make a living, is for you to do your research, do your work, prepare your processes, marshal your arguments in court, and at the end of the day, the outcome of the case is determined by what did not actually happen in court, by considerations that have nothing to do with the proceedings itself. That has always been a problem. Now, the judges, the lawyers, the court officials, we must also take our blame. Because it's not only, look, if, let's assume a magistrate, right, is offered a bribe, in some instances, the lawyer could have been involved in it. We have seen lawyers who have been sanctioned by the Legal Practitioner Disciplinary Committee for trying to influence judges over the years. We have seen such cases. But there has to be proper accountability. Now, the problem is actually that when we are speaking about the problem in the judiciary, let us not just focus on the appellate courts, the Supreme Court, the Court of Appeal. Even at the magistracy, if you know what is happening at the magistracy or in some magistrate courts in this country, you will weep for this country. Because, I'll give you one very common example. Remand orders, where police arrest people and simply go to magistrate court and get an order to detain them. Now, we used to have what was called holding charge, where the police would just arrest you for a case, say murder or a serious case, that the magistrate court has no jurisdiction. They'll still take you to the magistrate. The magistrate will remand you in the correctional center or the prison, and you stay there indefinitely. And that accounted for the overcrowding, the overpopulation of our correctional center. The law, starting from Lagos State, introduced the Administration of Criminal Justice Law in 2011. At the federal level, we had the ACJ in 2015. But despite the passage of these laws, the police in particular and other law enforcement agencies continue to use magistrate courts to basically bastardize the criminal justice system. If you go to the Nigerian prisons today, look at even the effort the federal government is making to get 4,000 inmates released. The bulk of those inmates that are crowding is a failure of the judicial system. Because magistrates have, in very many instances, been very reluctant to insist that the right thing should be done. So the police would not simply go get the order. So this abuse has been going on, and very little is done to checkmate it, to change it. The other issue is character. Because the judiciary, despite all our complaints, is also a reflection of the Nigerian society.
Yeah, you'll talk about that when we return from this break. I thank you for staying with us. We've been looking at this matter of eyes on the judiciary, how the judiciary is seemingly on trial as it is at this point because of the several controversies that have trailed the judiciary in recent times. And we have in the studio lawyer Inibehe Effiong speaking with us on that. And before we went on the break, you were talking about another challenge being character.
Yes, character. And as I said, the Nigerian judiciary, like the Nigerian police, like INEC, like every institution in this country, to an extent is a reflection. It mirrors who we are as a people. I mean, there is no need pretending about it. It mirrors who we are. And the tragedy, particularly for the judiciary, is that the few who are bastardizing the profession, they are the ones that gain traction. They are the ones that gain currency. It is their questionable pronouncements, right, that seems to cast doubt on the integrity of our courts.
So how is it that the NJC cannot rein in, or the Nigeria Bar Association cannot come to you, just call these people to order?
Well, I think that is a question for the NJC to answer. But as a member of the Nigerian Bar Association, I think NBA must also take blame to an extent for what has happened. And the Nigerian Bar Association is expected to fight not only for its members, but also for the judges too. And to also be seen to be defending the profession, to be standing up to the profession. Whether the NBA currently is doing that satisfactorily, I do not think so. So we have a problem. But the other issue is that within the NJC itself has to be reformed. I think the time has come for Nigeria as a country to have that conversation. The National Judicial Council, aided by His Lordship, the Honorable Chief Justice of Nigeria, needs to be reformed. Needs to be reformed because the powers of the CJN is actually enormous. We have seen even this advocacy being driven by even, within the Supreme Court. Like again, I cite the case of the recently retired justice of the Supreme Court. Yeah. We need to re-examine the role of the NJC in the disciplining of judges because unlike other institutions of government, the courts have held that you cannot discipline a judge without going through the NJC. So no matter what the judge does, you still have to go through the NJC. The question is how effective has that process been over the years? Is the NJC really doing and exercising its function as a watchdog effectively? How effective has that role been? That question has to be answered. And within the profession, the NBA must also ask itself, what have we done or what are we doing wrongly? And how can this be remedied? Because beyond complaints, we must find solutions to this problem. Okay. But the starting point is still remains character. But no matter the laws, we have so much laws in place. We have the Code of Conduct for judicial officers. We have the rules of professional conduct for legal practitioners. The laws are there. But what is the extent of compliance? So I'm therefore advocating that the NBA should take up the challenge of sanctioning lawyers who are saying, I can't imagine it. I can't even fathom that a lawyer will wake up and think of bribing a judge or bribing a magistrate. It should be unheard of.
Okay, so let me give you a report by ICPC, and it says here that Judiciary tops its Nigeria Corruption Index. The report says about 9.45 billion naira was offered and paid as bribes by lawyers to judicial officers between 2018 and 2020.
That's quite a lot of money. That's quite a lot of money.
So my question to that as an addendum is, where is the hope of the common man who does not have this kind of money?
That's between just 2 years.
No, this doesn't mean, I don't want us to paint a very bleak picture. I don't want this to look like the entire institution.
It seems you're not looking at conversations that people are having.
I agree that this is a problem that must be addressed. But you see, there's a limit to what we as individual practitioners can do. The institutions are there, and I'm saying that these institutions must be reformed. The National Judicial Council needs to be reformed. We need to really look at the process that judges are checkmated, from the writing of petitions and so on. We need to also look at lawyers. No lawyer who is found to have made an attempt to compromise the judge should be allowed to remain a lawyer for one day. I mean, it should be an abomination for this kind of things to happen. But the politicians must also ask themselves, if we continue to try to manipulate the judicial system, we will still need to depend on this judiciary when we are in crisis. Because what you find is that when people have access to power, or when people have access to resources, they try to pollute the institution of the judiciary. But tomorrow, when they are at the receiving end of the establishment, they still run to the same institution of the judiciary. So what I am saying is that it is in the interest of all. It is in the interest of all to ensure that we safeguard the judiciary. But beyond this, we also need to address the welfare of judges. Right. The salary of judges in Nigeria is ridiculous.
Is it about addressing the welfare? I understand that we have to address
that.
No,
because
if you are about that, because you also mentioned character earlier. And so if you are mentioning in another breath that we should talk about the salaries of judges, is it about those two? Because character, if
no matter what you receive,
you will not.
You are content.
No, I'm not making an excuse. Right. But I'm saying that the solution has to be holistic. If you look at what judges in Nigeria are being paid, if all judges in Nigeria are to rely on their legitimate earnings,
how much do they earn?
It's ridiculous.
Would like to hear.
It's ridiculous. I mean,
How much do they earn?
it's ridiculous.
As ridiculous as it is, let's just hear what it is.
I'm not going to put a figure to it, but it is not something that is commendable. I mean, recently, the retired justice of the Supreme Court came out to say that even the chief registrar earns more than the justices of the Supreme Court.
How come?
Yes, earn more than the justices of the Supreme Court. Some judges in Nigeria do not earn up to 300,000 or 400,000 per month under the current economy. It is that bad. So, and then, even beyond the question of salary, some judges in Nigeria even pay their judicial assistants from their pockets. Go to our courts. Lagos have even tried in terms of infrastructure. Go to some courts I've gone to a court in Nigeria that, you know, I had to even basically sit. In fact, they don't have chairs.
Where did you sit?
Well, they just molded funny things, and then that is where everybody. I'm just telling you how bad the system is. Judges are still writing with long hands. So part of the problem has to be
Reform.
infrastructure, right? We need technology. Look at like the embarrassment that we are seeing from Kano,
Yes.
right? Where
Certified true copy.
a certified true copy of judgment of court is being contested. What is certified true copy? Certified true copy means you are certifying that this is a true copy of the decision of the court. Once it is certified, that is the end of the matter. But we are not seeing certified true copy of decision of the court of you being recalled for correction.
Clerical error.
Clerical error, really? And then we are seeing a situation where judgment is given. They say, oh, but both sides are wondering who is actually the victor, who is actually the winner, in whose favor was the judgment given. All these kind of situations can be avoided. But the other part is that we must also ask ourselves, right? The process of appointment into the bench. Okay, how do you become a judge? How do you become a magistrate? If you look at the list, like I said, also focus on the states, not just the national level. If you look at the list of appointment of magistrates in Nigeria, in fact, one that happened in my state, Akwa Ibom, not too long ago, when I look at the list of those who were appointed as new magistrates, it is either they are related to people who are already in the judiciary or they are friends of people that are in government. And all these facts were established. And this is what is happening across the entire country. Politicians are populating the judiciary with their proxies. We have to say it. And this simply should not be tolerated. Going to the bench should be a matter of honor. It should be something that someone shouldn't have to lobby for. It should be a call to service. But now we are seeing people being appointed to the process of appointment and elevation has been politicized, and that has to change. So we need to really look at the role of the courts in resolution of electoral disputes.
It's critical.
We need to look at it in resolution of consistency in judicial pronouncements.
Yes.
Today, we hear that membership of a political party is the domestic affair of the party for which the court has no jurisdiction to probe into. Tomorrow, we see membership of a political party being the basis for the removal of a governor. People are seeing these things. So we are, as a profession, we must also do away with what I call institutional arrogance. We should have the humility to listen to what the public that we are serving as a profession is saying. There is need for consistency. We cannot be having court judgment, basically saying the opposite. Leave even political matters. Freedom of Information Act. Yeah. I want to give you an example. The Freedom of Information Act. There has been a debate whether it is applicable and binding on states. We have currently 2 Court of Appeal judgments. Guess what? They were given 1 day apart, 24 hours apart, right? One is the Dosaka case in Edo State, and the other is Alo and the Speaker of Lagos State House of Assembly. 1 day apart. The Court of Appeal Division in Akure, the Court of Appeal Division in Edo, gave 2 contradictory judgments within 24 hours. So when you go to court today, right, like when I wrote to Governor Sanwo-Olo during his first term to ask for a certain document, and they simply told me, what is our business? The FY Act does not apply to states. So you go to court now, and you want to sue a state government, the government will carry their own judgment that favors them, and you will carry your own. That is not how it is supposed to be. There is need to sanitize the system. There is need to digitalize the courts so that when judgments are given, those judgments are circulated for all the, divisions of the courts to be aware of.
Right.
We need consistency, especially in political matters.
Right. We'll continue this conversation after this break. Do stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. We still have our guest in the studio, still looking into the matter of the situation around the judiciary as we speak. And you were speaking to some issues before we went on the break. But I'd like to quickly touch on the matter you mentioned earlier, that, you know, the judiciary and some of these persons who come into the system being proxies of politicians. And this also has been the issue where some people say it's a matter of state capture. They call it the matter of state capture, so to speak. But I am wondering how much of a concern and how much of a danger this poses for our democracy as it is. You have mentioned earlier the role of the judiciary in determining the election matters, and we have seen how Nigerians are beginning to speak with regards to if this is how things are, what's the essence of we, the electorate, coming out to vote at the end of the day. Speak to these issues.
The truth of the matter is that the courts, you know, I started by laying a foundation on how unique and special
they are.
The courts, the judiciary is. Now, when decisions of courts are given, sometimes they don't necessarily need to reflect public sentiment, right? But they must reflect common sense, right? People shouldn't live with the impression, like we say, you know, justice is rooted in confidence. Confidence is destroyed when right-thinking observers who observe the proceedings go away saying the judge was biased or the judge was compromised. So confidence is the greatest asset of the judiciary.
Right.
When the judiciary lacks confidence, or people lack confidence in the judiciary, that affects the legitimacy of the decisions of our courts. The respectability. Why do you think politicians taunt their opponents to go to court? Why do you think a policeman will arrest somebody and tell you to go to court? As lawyers, the police tell us lawyers who go to police stations, right? Who have cause to go to police stations. They will tell you, go and wait for us in court. Go to court.
They're that bold.
Yes, because they simply believe that decisions of court are ineffective. How did we get there? So we need to really look at this problem. But the one on political cases, the one on elections, whether pre-election or post-election, judges must understand that the destiny of a country, the destiny of a people is at stake. Because if we continue on this trajectory, look at what is happening. I feel sometimes very sad on social media. I'm active on social media. You go on X, formerly Twitter, you see the way Nigerians are scrutinizing judgments of the Supreme Court.
Yes.
People that are not lawyers. You see the way they are bastardizing, the way they are abusing justices and lawyers, right? And you begin to ask yourself, how did we get here? So the judiciary must admit, the starting point is that we need to have an admission as a profession that something is wrong, that the public has lost confidence to a large extent in our courts, and find a way to remedy it. We're not going to solve that problem through self-denial. And I said, the Chief Justice of Nigeria, the Honorable Chief Justice of Nigeria, I would recommend, right, should have maybe set up a Truth and Reconciliation Commission in the judiciary. I will call for a Truth and Reconciliation Commission.
What would that do?
To look at this problem, because we have had committees constituted in the past, right, to look into the problem of the judiciary. But implementation has always been a thing. So maybe we need to now have a dialogue where people that have grievances with our courts can publicly come out and state it, and then we begin the healing process. So this is now about lawyers and judges and justices taking responsibility, becoming more alive. Judges should also insist on the integrity of their orders. How can you sit as a judge and make an order for a citizen or someone to be released, and the person is being held, and the matter comes before you, and you are still sitting? You are still making excuses. You are not insisting that I am giving you till 5 p.m. tomorrow. Okay, so until I'm giving you 2 hours to produce this person. So judges must assert the authority when the executive or arms of the executive or law enforcement agencies flout their orders.
Right.
How would judges exert authority when they are allegedly said to be under the palms of the government, state governments?
Well,
how does this ensure that how do we ensure that the judiciary is actually independent?
I think it's for judges to realize that they don't work for governors. They don't work for the president.
But
they must realize that.
Okay.
Right? They must agree that the judiciary is an independent organ of government. But as I told you, what is independence? You know, they say he who pays the piper.
It is
takes the tune.
And I keep telling Nigerians, the same thing when we speak about the embarrassment that the National Assembly has become. I said that in terms of accountability, the federal government has always been better. In terms of bastardization of state institutions, the state governors are the worst culprits. And I have had cause to describe them as constitutional vandals. Because at the state level, what you have is constitutional vandalism. There is very little accountability at the states, including at the judiciary level. Governors basically see judges as people that work for them. I'm not going to mention a state, but I had a chief judge who told me, stop fighting my governor in open court. He didn't say stop fighting the governor, he said my governor. You can see the personalization. Right. A chief judge in Nigeria told me in open court, stop fighting my governor. Stop fighting my governor. You think that if it is everything you want from the court, you just keep fighting all these cases?
That's why I kept asking, so where is the hope of the common man?
It is a character problem. We need to realize that the judiciary is an independent arm of government. This nonsense of governors announcing that they have broadcasts for judges, the welfare of judges constitutionally is supposed to be charged, is a first-line charge. From the Consolidated Revenue Fund, the judiciary is supposed to be autonomous. The judiciary is supposed to have a way of doing projects without necessarily having to need governors or chief justice office, having to go and beg the executive. If we don't address the problem of financial autonomy, we are wasting our time. We are wasting our time. So we need to really ask ourselves, do we really want an efficient judicial system? If we want an efficient judicial system, the process of discipline of judicial officers who have violated their oath of office, of lawyers who have violated the rules of professional conduct, should be re-scrutinized. We must also look at the process of appointments of people to the bench. The fact that my father is a chief judge or my father is a justice should not be automatic that I must be one. I mean, it's beginning to look like what we see in the Pentecostal church. As the general overseer is retiring, the son takes over or the wife takes over. We shouldn't have that kind of legacy in the judiciary. It's not a reading tree. It shouldn't be genetically transmitted. It shouldn't be sexually transmitted. Appointments into the courts, into the judiciary must be totally based on merit. It shouldn't be because you know somebody that can recommend you, that can speak on your behalf. We must speak about these issues, and we must speak about it honestly.
Now, as perhaps a low-hanging fruit, where do we begin with restoration of confidence on the judiciary as a matter of low-hanging fruit?
The buck stops on the decks of the heads of courts, beginning with my Lord, the Honorable CJN, to the chief judges of states. Right? We must find a way to agree that Nigerians have a problem trusting. I mean, do you know that it is so bad that in cases where the courts are giving the correct decision, people still suspect that there is something. Yeah. Even when no corruption is involved. That is what loss of faith and confidence does. That even when the judges are right, people still question it because they are now beginning to see that politicians, look at what the person from one of the northern states said, I think Plateau or so, the National Assembly member, I think, who was boasting that when we get, we will show them who we have. We saw the husband of a retired head of court boasting openly that he assisted his colleagues in political matters. In some countries, self-respecting countries, when these kind of things are said, you see consequences. You see accountability.
So accountability is also what needs to be addressed.
We need accountability. We need institutional reform. We need to look at the welfare of judges. We need to digitalize our courts. I shouldn't have to be going through so much for me to have access to judgments of courts.
All right.
It should be uploaded on the website. Everybody should be able to have it immediately they are
in that
delivered.
regard, right? Because we're passing judgments via Zoom now.
Is that... His facial expression is enough. Anyway, we'll have to leave this conversation here now. Lawyer Inibehe Effiong, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
On the program, as always, interesting. Thank you for staying with us. Now, the debate on the need for state policing is gaining momentum with the recent realities of